This is a presentation on the capability of Auto-GPT, which is a new AI. It works in Visual Studio Code. It's from GitHub. It's a little hard to configure, but it runs, as the name implies, automatically, which is very good. You give it a couple of directives and it works for hours and prints and writes files and reads files. Works in a virtual environment. It has its own dedicated workspace, so it can't mess up your computer, and it's really excellent. So I'm going to give a nice, coherent, quick, concise presentation about the capability and what I'm using it for today. One thing you got to know about it is it can definitely outpace a human worker over a 24-hour span. In 5 minutes, I could probably get more done than it, because sometimes it's searching my computer, it doesn't know what command to use, and it works one command at a time. So it's trying to read to a file, it can't quite find the file, and so it seems frustrating to a human. The file is right there, go get it. But over a long span, 24 hours or 12 hours or 3 hours, it definitely 100% is outworking you any day of the week. And it can run 24 hours, and it can run on your computer. And if you have a strong and fast computer, that's obviously great. And, I'll say this. This is a direct quote from myself that I just made up for this. It's like a pyramid. Because the configuration of it takes a long time, and the inputs you put into it, you have to be very thoughtful about. But the output that comes out of it is like a little laser beam that's powerful and precise and technical, and it just gets the job done. So you can't, put a bunch of gibberish in and it won't work. So you have to spend a lot of time configuring the file settings, configuration settings to how you like it. Then you run it with a command, and then you type in, I want to do manual, and it says, what are the, name me. It says, and then it says, what am I here for? And then it says it asks for 5 goals. So you have to be, say, go to your workspace, search, or go to your workspace, create a text file, write 10 equations that you found on the computer, and then make a Python file where you convert those equations into Python functions, right? It can do that. It can do that easily. I'll show you that in a second. But if you don't tell it to do that organized stuff, it'll just sort of do nothing. And so let's say it's like a pyramid, because it's all about the organizational structure of the program. That's how you get it right. And so the agenda for these slides is just to show the capabilities. And the capabilities are simple. Mathematical formulas into Python functions, scientific formula into Python functions, and economic formula into Python functions. And by the end of today, I'll publish on my GitHub a long Python file that has mathematical, scientific, and economic Python functions. And it's going to be like 100 functions long. And the cool thing is you can download the zip, or you could use your terminal on Mac to git clone the repository. And then you could use something like PyCharm, Jupyter Notebooks, VS Code, or any sort of Python, file runner emulator. And you can call the functions. And then you just put in the variables, right? So let's say you have a bunch of information about kinetic energy in front of you, and you just need to you want your computer to calculate the kinetic energy. Call the function. It'll ask you for the mass and the velocity of the object, and then the computer, without even telling you anything, is going to do kinetic energy equals 1/2 mass times velocity squared, right? So you just input some information about the system, and it'll call the appropriate function. And that's what we're going to be demonstrating right now. And I did these next examples with ChatGPT, because I said Auto-GPT works for hours at a time, and ChatGPT, it's very quick. Auto-GPT also uses ChatGPT, uses the GPT API, And so I just copied and pasted these really quickly for the purpose of this thing, because I don't have a lot of time today, frankly, to be messing around with this. And so here they are. Here's a great example of a math equation, and we all know it. I'm not even going to say the name. And now here's the Python equivalent, right? It's not very complicated, but do I want to do shift 8 to do, to bring a to the exponent 2? No, that would take me some time. And so would just typing the underscore in between Pythagorean theorem, typing the underscore would just take me an extra second. And so all of this things start to add up for a human. For the computer, they don't, though. Okay, so the computer is very quick, and you notice the indentation. Humans get confused with that. Computers, they don't get. AutoGPT does not get confused, and ChatGPT, AutoGPT will spit this out faster than you can, and it will spread out just so much more information, and it's good information, assuming you put good prompts. So this is a mathematic example. Here's a scientific example with velocity, right? We all know velocity is distance divided by time. And then here's the Python for it. You use that hash mark to take, write the velocity. You comment it out. Okay, it's not something everybody knows. That comments it out. And then you define the velocity function with the variables distance and time. Put the colon. And then a tab or 4 spaces, and you just do the return. Return is the function, and it's returning the distance divided by the time. It's not different from the scientific definition. It's just written in a Python version, Python format. It's all about, here's another word, syntax. The computer uses special syntax, and that's how it does its math. And here's the last set of equations that I'm going to be posting today. This is an economic equation. If you don't know this, if you can't guess this, I feel sad for you. And so that's the compound growth equation, right? It says it right there, right? So if you couldn't guess it in that short amount of time, you're a worm, maybe. And so here's the thing. That would be difficult to translate into Python for me. And computer takes a moment. Return amount. And the only thing it's missing here is a print statement, right? At the end of when I publish them on GitHub, they're going to have print statements, so you get to see your own answer. And that's positive. That's positive. And that could get confusing, as these equations get a little longer, like the uncertainty principle in physics, a little long. And then you got to find that H bar. That's a hard one to find on the Unicode, UTF-8 keyboard. It doesn't exist, the H bar, so you got to copy and paste it or find it, search for the character. Or also psi, the one that looks like a Y, and that's in the uncertainty principle. That's difficult to find for a human, but the computer has no problem. And so let's just go to a lot of examples now that the computer printed out really quickly for me, and that inspired this untitled slideshow. Here they are. There's acceleration, velocity final, velocity initial divided by time. And look, bang, here's the Python function, right? And so basically, this was written by ChatGPT, and I said to him, go on the internet and find the most frequently used physics equations, please. And it took some time, but he did it. And then I took them, and just for the sake of example, I said to them, okay, print the physical equations from frequently used equations.txt, convert them into file.py syntax, right? So I'm saying use the Python syntax, use the Python vocabulary way of speaking, right? So this, instead of equals vf vi divided by t, return final underscore velocity minus initial velocity divided by time. Another thing humans have problem with is naming constants. Here it's pretty easy, but we also say like initial velocity, we might say v naught, right? And then what do you do? V underscore and then UGHT. The computer makes it simple and just does initial velocity. So, and also names all the constants here, which is just something that I don't know any people that would think to do that. And that's really smart. So this took the thing no time, much quicker than I could do it. And I'll show you the workspace this thing uses. And so I'll also show you organizational structure. So this is one touch. This is a hard drive. And I deleted everything on my Mac. And I installed this 2 terabyte hard drive. It's called One Touch. It has a green thing on it. I just right click and put a green thing on it. I'm on Mac. And here's my down. And then I just made downloads. Went to my settings. So everything that downloads from Safari goes to here instead of my regular computer. Then I made another subfolder that's basically only for app downloads, and the reason I made it x.app is because .app is a computer, it's reserved for the computer system, so you can't name it .app.downloads. You have to name it x.app.downloads. And anyway, here we are with another green dot, just so I know where to click. Where do I click? Green dot. Oh, config, not today, because I already did the config. This was on a previous work. And so I'm showing the workspace for AutoGPT, and it works and operates in a virtual environment, okay? And so here's the virtual environment that it works in. And I say to him, print the alphabet in your workspace. And look, here is written workspace. And then here he goes with the alphabet. I did this in the video, and that's the first time I had luck with the configuration, because he was having problems with his memory. His memory is empty, and it was causing a problem. But I just ended up writing it manually by typing in period / RUN period SH space, dash, as in, the dash that looks like, it's not an underscore, but it's like a middle score, just a dash, like this one. And manual, MANUAL, and it ran fine. Okay, so just run it manually. This file logger, look, it shows One Touch, which is my hard drive, all the way down to my workspace. So it's telling the thing where to write to. And so this is important that you don't delete it. And look, here's the frequently used equations. And then I asked it to make a schematic of a GPU. And it basically, if you can read Python like you can read English, which I can, like anybody can, because it just says the shit the things right here, clock speed, and print the clock speed and click the memory and print the model. And so it just says, this is the GPU. Display the information on the GPU, right? And so that's a successful, and so I marked it green. And now here's the physical equations .py, so it's in the Py syntax. And here's the thing. I named it Economics 12, right? Because it asks you for a name. And then it'll write the code that it executed. And this one I asked to compare, just put the technical parameters of a GPU, a random imaginary GPU, on a bar chart. And it did that. And this one is just basically sort of a copy. And so I marked it red, and I'll move it to the trash. But marking things red and green is a great way to organize, and so is putting things in a One Touch 2 terabyte hard drive. The only thing is VS Code is in my hard drive, and if I unplug my hard drive, VS Code is not going to work. I have to restart my computer. So just don't jostle your computer around. And I'll show you now my code that's running. And I said to it, go off and let's see, maybe even have the exact prompt. No, I don't. The exact prompt is go find a bunch of math things and print them in a text and write them in Python. So here's the thing, it's thinking at the moment. Literally, it calls itself as thinking. This is called thinking for the thing, for this website, for this software. And it's using browse website, right? So that's ahead of ChatGPT because it's on 2023 time, right? It's searching the web now. And it's doing pre-K 8th grade math section of the Khan Academy website. And it's looking for the math equations and it's turning them into Python functions. And like I said, I plan to do 100 of those today. This thing is going to do 100 of them for me. And yeah, that's really great. And like I say, it's like a pyramid. And so the more work you put in to your inputs, they should be pretty thoughtful. The output is going to be really good. Really good. And this is just the last thing I'm going to share for today. It's just a mathematical explanation of the pyramid model, and it actually just happens to be written in HTML because I like the style of HTML. And yeah, I'm going to show you this. Best HTML viewer. Obviously, you need to click the best one. And here we are. And so this is how the Auto-GPT thing works with this equation that I made up, but it's true to form. So A times M equals B times N. And A is your input, B is your output. M is a real number greater than 1 because you need to input something. You could input nothing, it's just not going to run. So you input something more than 1, and you get out an input that's greater than your input. So if you put in 1, you're going to get at least 2. 2 what? 2 real answers, 2 real characters, 2 real sentences. So you put in a real sentence and you get out 2 real sentences. What ends up happening is your input, it's just like A or just 1. It's just there to illustrate this fact that which one side is input, one side is output, okay? So what actually ends up happening is you put in M, it ends up usually being 5 or 7 because you say its name, its purpose, and then 5 directives. That's 7 things. And this output is N. And let's see the real number for the output right now. I gave it 111 authorized commands. Okay, so 111 minus 57 is the answer for N. And I guess yeah. So it's a big number, and that's why it's like a pyramid. It just, I don't know, maybe it's like a tree, like an inverted pyramid, but just don't worry about that. It's not important at all. What's important is that you put in the right input, very high quality and very thoughtful input, and you'll end up getting a very precise, careful, and technical output. And right here, it's just some more HTML that explains it. This thing doesn't speak German, okay? I don't know. It should. And that's a limitation. And this is what I explained to you before when I was speaking and you weren't listening. And I said to use -- manual mode, and you were thinking about a name of a dash. And the configuration settings are in the .env file. They're in a text format. They're very simple to change. API is easy. You just need this GPT API you get from openai.com. And you need a Google Cloud API. Sneak peek, you also need to download Google Chrome, right? So I was running this thing yesterday with no Google Chrome because I didn't have it on my new computer. And it said binary Chrome not found, and I said, come on, please. And then I realized, oh, I don't even have Google Chrome installed, so how is it going to use Chrome on my computer? So I installed it, and it worked. And yeah, the execution time, it takes a long time. So don't just sit there and watch it. Get working on something else and let it run in the background. And when you're done, you're going to notice some new files in your system's workspace, in its virtual environment. And those are the files you asked for. And that looks like some jargon nonsense. And that's it. That's the video. Goodbye.